Hello and welcome to episode 283 of The Crate and Crowbar. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I am joined by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
I forgot to mention that it is the 29th of May, 2019. If you rely on this podcast to know what day it is, then I'm sorry we let you down last week.
Day it was.
What day it was on Wednesday. Then that's the day it was on Wednesday. And we are the people we were on Wednesday. And here are the opinions we had on Wednesday. And here's what the news was on Wednesday. What was the news on Wednesday, Alex?
World's Adrift wasn't anymore.
We can't do this whole
Wednesday.
podcast in the past tense, Alex.
I was interested to see, and a little sad to see, World's Adrift has been cancelled. World's Adrift being the very ambitious MMO, physics-y laden MMO, player creation laden
MMO.
Building sort of ships, sort of flying ships MMO, grappling hook MMO, all of the things MMO.
This is all going a bit
Bossa Studio.
This is all going a bit Randy Pitchford describing Bloodborne.
Yeah.
And
not Bloodborne, Battleborn. Sorry.
To be honest, that's it's maybe a kiss of death, isn't it? If you're like describing a game takes
if you
about
go Randy on
words. Like that game also did not.
It was a really cool concept. It's also built on Spatial OS, the persistent mega server driven sort of MMO.
Which again, it's a nebulous concept.
It is a nebulous concept. But in this case, it meant that everyone shared a single world, and when you built your little flying ship and you went away from the game for a bit, you'll find it kind of mouldering where you left it.
Did you play it?
I did briefly.
Yeah, did you maybe talk about it on this podcast?
Yeah, I may have done.
Yeah, I did. Someone told me it was quite technically impressive.
I mean, I liked its promise massively. I didn't really enjoy it as it was. Like, it had kind of physicsy jank. Like, it hadn't gotten quite past that stage of where you're making a physics-based game where you've got the emergent depth from being able to harness physics to grapple hooks and zoom around a world, while also being easy and pleasurable to control if you're not super skilled.
Surely
that was a real issue for me.
Spatial OS is a cloud technology. Surely that just trivially solves the whole problem.
Yeah.
As Microsoft have been telling us in every E3 for the last 5 years.
Because
there's the cloud,
problem.
you can do infinite physics with infinite players and there's never any slowdown or flaws.
That was never the problem for me. Like, there was never the lag and things. There wasn't really any of that. Like, things rolled down hills and there wasn't any kind of strange kind of lagging in and out and things. The problem was that just the game was, it was deep in the sense that you had to, in order to build a really good ship and other crewmates, you'd need crewmates to fire guns and tend to its bits and pieces. So you'd have to have friends playing at the same time, or you get involved in some clan thing, So there's lots of sort of time and depth in that kind of thing. But as any new player, it's really daunting. There's the crafting system where if you want to build that good ship, you're going to have to spend ages building up your crafting knowledge and all the blueprints and whatnot that you'd need. So there's that side of it. But, in the video that Bossa put out about cancelling it, they were very clear about the fact that it isn't the game they were aiming to make. It's 20% of what they aimed. They wanted loads of single player stuff. They wanted more lore in it. If, my experience of playing it, maybe a year ago or something, it was a very quiet world. There's lots of suggestions of kind of a lore there, but, it's just, pretty bits of scenery, really. There's nothing underpinning it as explicitly in the world. Like, that wasn't there. And there's meant to be solo kind of, I don't think they're dungeons exactly, but, puzzles in the world and things to do that aren't simply, building ships and doing PvP. So, yeah, I'm sad to see it cancelled, and I think that it was a cool experiment. Definitely a very good
still in
experiment.
early access, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it never exited, early access. I think that if you bought it, I think since the end of April, you'll be reimbursed.
Huh.
But before, if you bought this in, before then, you will not be reimbursed, because I think they'll be turning it off in July. This is, being a server-based game, you could imagine the costs of keeping it running must be pretty high.
I have to admit, like, I was sort of surprised to see that this had happened, because I think, like, maybe a lot of people, maybe it's just me, but when something's in early access, you know, I remember you talking about it on the podcast now, and I remember being about a year ago and thinking, that sounds interesting. I'll put it on the mental list of things I'll probably play when it comes out, because, you know, an early access investment is one thing. I've talked plenty of times about how I prefer to wait in most cases for it to be done. And this, if it's strange to have a game cancelled out of early access, if that makes sense, because, I mean, obviously it makes sense, but, you know.
I think I guess there's the server costs, so, there's a more pressing need to actually stop it, rather than just like wind it down or back burner it. But for a counterpoint, you can look at Space Base DF9, the Double Fine game, where that was in early access. It wasn't making enough money to justify its continued development, and so they just called it 1.0 and said it's not early access anymore. And that caused a really bad reaction from people. So it's like, when you're in that position of, we've only made 20% of the game, I'm not saying that's the case in Space Base, but if that's what they're saying about this game, the decision of like, do you kill it completely, or do you just call that 1.0 and see how it does? There's definitely a downside to the latter as well.
Yeah, totally. I think, and you know, it sounds like it was far enough from where they wanted it to be that maybe that's just not ethically or personally kind of viable.
Well, I think they've encountered massive problems. I understand, like from this video, they were talking about how, you know, all of the time since it's been out, they've been squashing bugs and dealing with the massive problems and challenges that come from doing physics, MMO kind of, you know, those kind of games. What I found really interesting. Oh, sorry, Tom, you said, because I was going to push it in a slightly different direction.
So was I. Push it in your direction first.
Okay. What's interesting to me is that, since it was announced and since it came out, Sea of Thieves has come out, which is broadly the same kind of game. Have a ship, have a crew of other players and go out and explore.
And that had such backing from MS.
Huge backing. So a very large established studio. Yeah. Like Microsoft kind of leading, came out on 2 platforms.
In a way that actually felt weird at the time. Like it turns out to be a good game, and I guess they knew that, and that's why they put their weight behind it. But at the time I was thinking, is this really your sort of flagship? Like, not that it didn't look good, but just like, this doesn't look like it's it doesn't look like your Gears of War.
Well, it came out pretty roughly. Like it came out with lots of, criticism of being really slight and not having enough to it. And they've, you know, that's how these kind of games emerge, and then the work starts in building all the kind of the depth.
So if you've got that kind of backing and you've got that, you know, the audience is there, if you fix it, then it can work.
Yeah.
But if you don't, it's...
And that game's been massively successful as well. Yeah. But without being as ambitious, in fact, you know.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. The thing I was going to say was, as you were describing this and how it didn't work out, like, even after all that work, only being 20% of the way there, you know, my takeaway is, hey everyone, be much less ambitious all the time, forever. And then that made me think of Starbase, which is a game that Frozen Byte does.
Yes.
Insanely ambitious. Like, you're watching it and think, oh, okay, a game about making starbases, and they're building some scaffolding in space.
It's like Space Engineers or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're thinking, cool, they're making one of those. It looks like a nice one. And then it just keeps on expanding and expanding. And then it's like full ship battles. And then it's like, going inside other people's spaceships, and it's a massively multiplayer, and all, it's just everything to all people. And, that's scary.
Yeah, it's the Steam forums design a heat signature expansion.
Yes, it is. Yes. It really is. Yeah, it's like, what should we put in our space game?
Everything.
The forums say everything. But I got this sort of sense that no single part of it looked very nice to play.
I think repairing looks nice. There's times when they're just sort of shooting a beam at a thing to fix it, and the way the effect for it's obviously some kind of shader where it's like the reverse of disintegration. If you know the effect,
I think it's like semi-voxel. Like when things were being destroyed, I think I did see a description of it being some sort of polygonal voxel system. Fuck, God knows what.
So it's almost as if the finished thing is like being painted in a really nice way.
Yeah, I watched that entire trailer and I have no idea at what point a human engages with, like, there's stuff like people, pulling, like, it did look voxely, like pulling specific panels off walls and then using them as shields.
Yes.
Or climbing around inside a space station that is also being bombarded by spaceships, and Yeah, like some kind of Rainbow Six Siege type kind of scenery destruction thing going on. And, sure. That's not to be glib. I mean, the thing, actually, the impression I got when watching it is like, and this has been true for a while, but like, it is possible to make, multiplayer games of a degree of complexity now that simply wasn't possible a couple of years ago. And I think sometimes you can go a while without seeing the benefit that technology is having on the kinds of games that can exist. I think particularly relative to the period that probably we were all coming up into PC gaming through, where it felt like the entire medium kind of overhauled itself every couple of years, at least visually, because of the kind of the late 90s, noughties graphics race, basically. Whereas the last couple of years, obviously there's always things developing, there's always design innovations and things like that. But in terms of technology and going like, oh, I don't think that could have existed a couple of years ago. It feels less frequent to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but it feels less common to me that something goes like, yeah, that definitely couldn't be done.
Yeah.
Or if you put out that trailer, you would go, that looks like that would never work. That looks like bollocks. Whereas now, actually, I believe that exists. The criteria for it being successful are like, could you get the 100 players it takes to, enact this scenario? How likely is that, and how do you incentivize it?
Yeah.
And that all of those questions still remain. But nonetheless, like, it actually did strike me that like, it looks like, the other thing it reminded me of is like, the sort of like, Half-Life Total conversion I would design when I was 15. I didn't know anything. And that's not to say that's the case, but because it'd be like, well, you can't do that. You know what I mean? You can't have, and you can shoot through the walls, and you can then climb inside the space station, and you're a robot, and you're a spaceship. Like,
what was that game that was on the PC gaming show, like, maybe 2 years ago, that was just like No Man's Sky, but also you can found an entire civilization and its own.
Oh, yeah.
Just.
Oh, I don't remember that.
That was like a whole other notch of all things to all people not in terms of what they showed, because I think they only showed the kind of No Man's Sky-ish part, but then, he was just talking about his plans next, like where it goes from there, and it's like, oh yeah, and then you'll be able to found civilizations and you dictate the laws of those civilizations and create your own systems of government.
Oh no.
I wonder if, to some extent, and I don't think this applies to any given developer particularly, but I think sometimes people extrapolate a bit too far from the immediate promise of ProcGen. It's like, I've made something that can do trees and hills. And what is space? Hills and trees. And what is systems of government, if not hills, I guess? And what is a combat system, if not hills? You know what I mean? Like, there's sort of like, there's some sort of fractal that they're imagining, but it's all made of hills, and that does not necessarily create a universe at the end.
Yeah.
I tell you what didn't happen to that game in the 2 years since I last heard of it. It didn't come out. Didn't get finished and released.
There's also, there's the programming element of that. There's the briefest moment of someone playing coding
in the
door in the Starbase thing, which,
right,
of course.
Which then, I don't know how you say the name. You know, that game that Notch was working on, 10 to the C, whatever it was?
10 to the C.
Which has,
Zero
presumably,
X,
might be where that came from.
0x10 to the C, 0x10C.
I know, it's a programmer thing. You should know.
There's something to the speed of light as well.
Oh, is it?
I think the C is the speed of light. Also, not out.
Given that it's, obviously, it's Wednesday, so tomorrow, but that's yesterday, listener, they're going to announce, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, a game that came out in 2007.
Well, actually,
there's nothing. There's nowhere to go with parody for this. Like, there's nothing you can say that's dumber than what they'll actually make the name of a thing. For the next Xbox, like in this room, if we tried, we couldn't think of a name that's dumber than what they will eventually pick.
Yeah. The next one will be, it'll just be Xbox, right? It's going to go Xbox.
It's devolving, isn't it? Because we had that round of kind of got the Xbox One and we've got Battlefield 1. So this is like taking out the number.
God,
like
if they just call it Box, I'll actually be kind of pleased.
Or X. It could be X. Yeah.
Why not go all the way?
It's gonna go Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox. And similarly, Call of Duty Actually, well, the thing is, it's
This
not
is going to be cool and
duty. Actually, that
Oh
would
God, it will be duty one day.
It will just be duty one day. I guarantee that.
duty.
I'm
Duty.
preemptively disgusted.
Yeah. But actually,
Do you remember
to
when
be fair,
Black Ops 4 just like had the 3 numeral and just added another line to it? Like, that's it. We're doing 4 that way. We know that's not right. We're just fucking doing it.
Yeah.
Just 4 lines.
it's an hostile guide. We can't
Screw you,
do V
Romans.
in this font.
It's just every time, every name, like, once something's sufficiently big, it's the name of it has to become fucking dumb.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that though, this technically isn't calling a game the same thing again, which does happen all the time. Because actually, technically, it was Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. So that isn't confusing.
I also heard, I haven't checked myself, but I heard that when they did Call of Duty, when they did Modern Warfare Remastered, which was relatively recent, they took the 4 off when they did that.
No,
so that
did
one
they?
is called Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered.
Oh dear.
So that is the remaster of the forthcoming Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Oh no.
Well, the good thing is that, let's assume that the target audience for this game remains people aged sort of 18 to 30. Then most of those people won't remember, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare.
Half a lifetime away.
Yeah, because it's half their lifetime ago. So, with that sobering kind of thought, maybe this is fine.
People were really fucking mad about, Infinite Warfare coming, the remaster.
That was a pretty similar, silly name.
So yeah, and coincidentally was also a AAA heatsig. When they first announced it at E3, like the video for it was just like first person breaking into a spaceship in flight and boarding it and taking out the crew, like, in the way that, Starbase,
Yeah, right.
Sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so Modern Warfare Remastered was bundled with Infinite Warfare, and I think that was the only way you could get it, and that's why people were mad at Infinite Warfare, especially. I mean, and they also didn't like it, but they were all like, why do I have to buy this piece of shit to get the good game remade?
Well,
so people do care about it.
Yeah, they do. But this isn't a remake.
No.
It's a new game.
Yep.
That is also called the same thing as
is
the
it?
other one.
Do we know when it's set and things?
I would hope modern times, for fuck's sake.
Tim said 2007. That's the thing that's confusing about this.
Oh, those classic old 2007 guns.
It's retro. It's like, that or early modern, like
mid-century modern.
Yeah, postmodern. It should presumably be now.
Now-ish.
2019. Now-ish.
I mean, I guess, so technically,
drones in it.
Modern, the word modern does refer to a specific period of time, doesn't it? It doesn't refer to now, it refers to...
No, it's not present
There was the
warfare,
modern
it's
period,
modern,
and there's the postmodern period, and, but it is commonly used to mean present day by most people. So under that use of it, they could just keep calling it Modern Warfare, and technically the meaning of that title changes as time progresses.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, but dumb.
Yep.
I mean, they've done it. They've gone and done it, and it's almost certainly going to be fine.
It's just the fact that what just makes me anxious every time I hear these kind of names is that where do you go next? What do you do next? And we've discussed that they just take off more and more words.
Yeah,
but
duty.
But then they'll go back to numbers. Like you just see all these naming conventions.
Yeah, fucking Hitman 2.
Fashions going round and round. Oh god!
They literally just put the same numbers on. Also, these days, NVIDIA graphics card numbers are now what Radeon graphics card numbers used to be.
Oh.
Like the Radeon 9800 or something was a sort of, I think like a 2008 graphics card, and the GeForce 9800 is like a 2018 one, I think. There was like a 10-year loop round period.
Oh.
Remember when they just made Prey again?
Yes. Just literally called it Prey. There's just 2 games on Steam called Prey.
I think one of them is in all caps, and the other one isn't.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's okay then.
Yeah, one of them shouted. It's a sort of
and
inflection
that game
thing.
wasn't even, like, related, really. Like, it's, started... Oh, no, it didn't start as a completely different thing, and then they just put the Prey name on it.
Of course, that it might, as it actually is announced, we might actually think, oh god, that is the perfect name for this shooting man game.
I feel compelled to perform my military responsibilities in the modern time. If that isn't the tagline in full, then I'm not purchasing this game. Good. We should talk a little bit about what we've been playing.
Could do.
Yeah, could do.
What have you
Well, I've been playing a thing that's newly out, so it's also semi-news.
Okay. Let's do that then.
Which is Void Bastards. Which came out today-ish. It seemed to come out in the middle of the night last night, actually. And that is a first-person game about breaking into spaceships. So very on theme. It's got this gorgeous comic book rendering style. It is 3D, but with sprite-based enemies. And it all looks like a really nice comic book. It looks like you remember 13 looking, but if you actually look at 13 these days, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
And it's a sequel to 13.
Gosh,
It's just called 13 again.
Third.
Thirtoon.
It's Void Bastards is also I think it's a roguelike. I haven't died yet, so I can't vouch for how that works. But it's kind of like it's got an FTL style map where you're taking, I guess you have a spaceship, but you also raid other people's spaceships. And
You've got to get to the spaceships, so you need the spaceships to get to the spaceships.
yeah, so you jump to nodes in the same way in FTL, you choose which place to go to next, and then when you arrive there's a ship there, and it tells you what reward is on board and what enemies you'll face if you go on there, and you can board it or not. You can just move on if you like. And if you board it, then you're in first person, and you start looking at the map of the ship, and you can see where all the different systems of it are, like the helm and the power and the FTL drive. In the helm, you'll be able to get a map of the ship, or a map of where all the loot is on the ship, so you know where to go. And in the power room, I so far have not been able to turn off the power of a ship, but if it doesn't have any power in the power room, you can turn it back on. In the FTL drive, you'll find barrels of fuel, which you need. You need one fuel for every jump, so you run out of that pretty fast and you need to loot other ships for it. And it's very much a resource game, more so than I realized at first, because I was, your health is persistent between ships. So if you lost half your health on this ship, you've still only got half health when you start the next one, and you're going to have to do something about it at some point. And the way you recover it mostly is food, which you also just steal from like cafeterias on ships. You just pick up some sandwiches and just take it with you. And like one sandwich is one food, and every jump you do, you consume one food as well as one fuel because it's taking time. And that heals you a little bit.
One sandwich per jump.
Yeah. It's got a wonderful veneer to it where like everything, the theming of it is just all off kilter and kind of dirty and weird and sometimes very Australian, sometimes somewhat Scottish. And like the sort of standard enemy that I'm fighting at the moment mostly are Juves, which I think is short for juveniles. And they just yell at like, "Oi, fuckface," at you when they're chasing you, and just basically verbally abuse you. The loot you find, one of the most common loot, like, they'll just find like a finger, or a foon, which is a spork, but alternate universe spork, or, just like general trash, and all that melts down, instead of melting down into like carbon and iron and, stuff like that, it's slag and bolts and, just like really flavorful names for everything. And like I don't know if I'm going to remember the whole recipe, but there's a lot of crafting with these resources to make new gadgets and stuff. And I can craft an air freshener to reduce the nausea caused by garbage by 50%. And for that, I need some ion brew and, another ingredient to craft that. And so you're building equipment like that. I haven't got far enough. So it's a first person shooter mostly, but it's very immersive sim inspired. The team who did it have some folks who worked on System Shock 2 and BioShock, and Farbs, who did Captain Forever, which is a spaceship building game that I really liked. And I can't yet, but you can eventually hack turrets and deploy robots. I've got some kitty robots now, but I haven't used those yet, so I don't know quite how they work. There's a gun that can like suck up enemies and then redeploy them elsewhere. and I haven't got to that yet. So I'm
You
like
can,
on the
I
cusp.
think you can redeploy them through walls as well, can't you? So you can kind of lock them away from you.
Cool. Yeah, you can lock every door, which is cool. Like every door has a lock on it. Sometimes they're locked and you just use that and it just takes a while to unlock it, but you can also lock it to keep enemies from coming through. And it does intentionally throw enemies at you just can't take on. Like, I can't take on a screw, which is a large, bulky robot type enemy. And so if one of those is around, I have to figure out a way to hide from it or try and lure it somewhere. And that's really cool. But yeah, I've only just started it, so I can't speak to how immersive cine it gets yet, but it's a lot of fun.
Has it got a good feel to it?
Yeah. Yeah, as a shooter, it's, feels satisfying. There's not a lot, it's not like, the recent Doom remake or anything in terms of action and agility and that stuff. You're pretty much, just shooting stuff when you see it and hiding around corners of it. But that's more of a resource management game. It's kind of, you really, there's little exploding enemies called tourists, and they really only take one shot to blow up, but you can only take one main weapon into a mission, or I can at the moment. And so when you're low on ammo for your pistol, you just have to, at the start of the mission, choose the shotgun instead, and then you just don't have a pistol, so you have to use shotgun on everything. Shotgun's super powerful, but ammo for it is a bit rarer, and so using a whole shotgun blast on one of those guys feels kind of wasteful. So I'm always looking for a way to like, can I get sort of 3 of them in my field of view and just use one blast to take them all out? And the other 2 might not even be aggroed. I'm, picking a fight that I don't need to be in, but just so I can make the most of the shotgun blast because I'm not getting any free refills ever. So that works surprisingly well, actually. Like, instead of having all the weapons and running out of ammo for them and then sort of, that there's a kind of bad feeling in these games sometimes where you're scraping by and you've got I don't have any ammo for my pistol, I found 3 bullets, so I'm going to switch back to my pistol until I've used up those 3 bullets, and then in the middle of the fight, I've got to switch back to something else. In this, it's just like, before the mission you pick, like, you've got 5 bullets for your pistol, you've got 16 shells for your shotgun, you take your shotgun, and you don't have your pistol for the whole mission, and during the mission you might find some pistol ammo, and so next time the choice is different, and that feels like a good, clean system for that.
And have you found, there's a danger with that feeling frustrating, that you kind of want to shoot stuff but on the other side of that, it might be pushing you to be more creative when you're playing. Is it working that way?
Yeah, it's cause I'm doing pretty well. Like I say, I haven't died yet. And I've been able to, when I was low on health, I was able to find a ship that had a med bay in it that I could raid. And it's like my whole objective in that mission is I just want to get to the med bay, heal myself up. And then
that's a self-set mission, isn't it?
Yeah. Each ship does kind of have a main feature. And so it's the game does kind of highlight whether you got that or not. Sometimes you're there for like a unique item that will create some new weapon or whatever. And it tells you whether you got that or not. Yeah, I've been doing pretty well, but, in like a full immersive sim, the resource economy tends to be kind of all or nothing, I find. Like, either I'm just doing great and I have infinite everything and I'm still not using it. I'm just throwing it on the ground because I can't carry it anymore. Or I'm behind the curve and so I'm using up everything and so I'm always behind the curve. I'm doing well, but I was completely out of ammo for the last mission I did, and I just had to figure out ways to hide and run past people and do that kind of improvisational stuff that forces you to explore the possibility space better. And it's cool. It's got that out of me without pushing me to the brink of like, oh god, my whole run is screwed. I'm, on 1 health and I'm never going to get anywhere and, have no medkits or whatever. Like, I'm doing all right for food, but food is not a thing that you can just eat on a mission. You have to be back at base and, to use it that way. And so it does a good job of like putting you in desperate situations, even though your overall situation is not necessarily a disaster.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I was excited too. So it snuck out though. So maybe that'll be one to return to next pod as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely play more.
On the subject of, space peril of a very different tone. I think we've all played Observation, which came out last week.
Indeed.
I have finished Observation.
I have also. Well, no, I haven't technically.
Yeah.
You've seen the end of Observation.
Yeah. I'm halfway through.
Right. Yeah. So we'll avoid, obviously, no spoilers in what we're about to say if you're playing it. Observation is the new game by No Code, who made Stories Untold, which was a sort of short sci-fi anthology. Or, sorry, it itself wasn't short, but it was an anthology of sort of short sci-fi stories told using inventive interfaces, basically. This is the studio by, John McKellen, who was the UI designer for Alien Isolation. And that's the deal. Yeah, well, yeah,
he done a game based on his.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Stories Untold is very similar. It's sort of, they're very cinematic experiences. Like everything No Code has done so far are very much like, almost like, and I don't mean this I just mean this sort of just in a purely descriptive sense, but they feel like sort of indie sci-fi movie projects that happen to be rendered in a kind of interactive form, but like, it's game elements, interactive elements being used for the purpose of expressing a mood in a story. It's very much not about your experimentation really, or even, to be honest, challenge. Really, it's, you know, it's like, the thing that occurred to me playing, it's more obvious in Stories Untold, but the thing that occurred to me in observation, which we're obviously to talk about the structure, but it's like, it feels like, to me, like the first walking simulator where you definitely don't have legs. Because, so it is a sci-fi short story, basically, or movie, set on board a, relatively realistically rendered near future space station. So there are elements of it that are a bit more advanced, but it's an International Space Station style thing. So a space station with an international crew made of several modules all watered together. And something done gone wrong in space again.
Again.
Yeah, it does keep happening, but it's in that sort of kind of low key, you know, realistic space travel kind of vibe, very 2001. And you are the station's AI. And as the station's AI, you interact purely, through the kind of interfaces that you have access to. So security cameras, that allow you to look around and access laptops and door terminals and things, documentation that you can scan, and your own internal systems. So, you know, I'm just sort of getting some mechanics so we can talk about kind of what it feels like, because those are two slightly separate things. But the pitch, so you have like, you know, so there's a lot of, I'm trying to think, because like, what would you call a quick time event if it wasn't quick? Maybe a slow time event? Like, there's a lot of just sort of performing
an interaction in order to
performing the interaction. Like, it's a game of kind of like universally really beautifully designed interfaces, basically, and beautifully designed documentation, manuals.
Beautifully designed, fuzzy screen interference.
Yeah. Like a lot of color separation and sort of old VHS sort of jank and big clunky.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix actually, because it has that retro feel, but then also like, it's doing things that those interfaces sort of, that would be, that in like the 80s would be science fiction in UI for like, when text is appearing on screen, as it's getting longer, it's rescaling the font dynamically so it fits perfectly on screen. I can imagine like, you know, in the 80s
lines.
looking at that and thinking, what? How is that being done?
Yeah, and it goes all over the place. Like, it's not, like Alien Isolation obviously had a very specific era of computing that it was trying to evoke, despite being a sci-fi game. This actually goes lots of different places, and like, worth talking about the aesthetics of it actually, because they are great. Like, it has
some of it's kind of like Linux kind of command line kind of.
My favorite one,
spooling lines and code
is I think it's the people tracker interface, and when you dial into it, it's like a router. Like
it is. I was going to mention the same one.
Web page. It's so pitch perfect.
It's like, and it's got a missing, but it's even got missing text. Missing images.
Yeah,
with a little sign.
It looks like a kind of Ubuntu kind of like shell for a router or something.
And
like that.
there's a mode, just the right length of moment as you're waiting for it to come up, like that makes it feel like it's sort of coming over a shit network.
This is off topic, but very brief. I had an image load right to left the other day.
What on the real internet?
Typically, images load top to bottom, and then every now and then you get the crazy one that loads bottom from top, and it's like, whoa, that's kind of freaky. For the first time in my 20 odd years of using the internet, I saw an image load not just horizontally, but right to left.
Cool.
I've seen some shit, man.
Yeah. But we should say, to help people visualize it, these, interfaces are located in a very, detailed 3D environment. It runs in Unity, but it has proper AAA kind of production values for the main environment. It has human characters, which is, like a Rubicon that a lot of sort of immersive sim style projects like this don't cross into having, emoting human characters.
They had a good excuse not to cross it here because generally people are wearing helmets. They just said, hey, everyone keep your helmets
in fact, the moment where
there's no air. Everyone keeps a reflective helmet.
The moment where the main character kind of takes her helmet off for the first time felt like a bit of a kind of like, and we've done faces. But yeah, so you interact with these, items around the environment. You also have, the ability to respond to things, which is used to selectively, but it's kind of neat idea. So
I was just going to say with, just to make it really clear, like, because it's neatly the module based,
space station.
The space station is really useful for this because how it works out is that, when you're in a module, like you choose on a map which module you want to manifest yourself. And then there are a number of cameras in that module that you can flick between that give you different views of that space.
Did you find there's a key I didn't notice till like an hour or more in where you can hold it and you can see like a 3D visualization of the space you're in and where all the cameras are and where all the objects are in it.
Yeah, it's shift.
Yeah, it's super useful.
Hold shift, everybody. It's really useful.
I'm playing on PS4 and there's no.
That'll be there.
I played on PS4
there probably
as
is
well.
one, but there's no in the list of controls. There's nothing for that.
It does stop being available at some point for some reason.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can, what's cool about it also is that you can freely move around the modules and have a look what's there. Like a lot of the time you have total freedom to go off and have a look at stuff when you're meant to be doing something else. Yeah.
Yeah. You also do get.
Oh, and you can get a free roaming sphere.
Yeah. You get for more freedom of movement later on as well. But yeah, the response thing I was going to mention is a nice idea, which is obviously you get voice commands and, part of what the story's about, and we're avoiding spoilers, part of what the story is about is, it's sort of showing the developing, sophistication of an AI from inside the AI, which is novel. And one of the ways it does that is, you receive voice commands and you kind of choose how you want to process them, but people request information from you. And what you need to do is find the thing that they want to know about. And then you hold R on the keyboard and click on the thing you want. And that triggers like a response rather than activating the thing, you talk about it. It's very context sensitive. It doesn't work all the time. In fact, it only works when it's designed to work, but it's a nice idea. And that can include UI elements as well. So it's like, I quite liked that as a motif that like to an AI, there really is no difference between its own, UI, its own maps and data and readouts and things and the physical world that you're viewing through cameras. It's just a set of information that you're processing from through lots of different streams, which I think is pretty cool.
It right away, it sort of establishes this AI as having been built to have a degree of autonomy that is, everything you would advise against. What the first thing that happened, one of the first things that happens is the user gives a voice recognition,
authentication
thing. You see your little subsystem checks whether it's valid or not and tells you it's not valid, and then you choose whether to accept it or reject it.
Yeah.
And so right away it's establishing there's a layer of separation between it's not just the subsystem rejects you because it doesn't recognize you. The AI has the authority to decide, am I going to just say, it's fine, whatever, or am I going to reject it?
And so in terms of what you actually do, it's functionally a point and click, really. Like, in terms of, you progress puzzle by puzzle, you hit, roadblocks, you get told to do something and you have to figure out how to do it. And so the simple early example is, there's a fire somewhere, but you don't have access to the system that easily identifies that because it's offline. So you have to go find it with your cameras and then find it and say, there's a fire here.
There's something kind of that was cool and it made sense. There's something really funny about rotating the camera towards this giant raging fire and saying, I see a fire. I think I detect a fire.
But it's like,
look, fire.
But that's kind of I did like how much that makes sense within the fact that you don't actually really have a physical manifestation of yourself. You can only, apart from when you're in the sphere, which actually is quite controlled about when opportunity with that.
Yeah.
You have no ability to affect other than but tell the humans to do something. So there are some doors and things that the solution to the puzzle is to say, there's something I can't do. Oh, okay, I'll do it for you then.
Yeah,
which is actually quite nice.
You're basically advanced Siri. And so you can do a lot more than Siri can, but occasionally it's just Yeah, no, I'm
worse than Siri. I'm genuinely worse than Siri because most puzzles I've forgotten what they asked me to do specifically, so I have to ask them several times what it is. Because on the same screen, when you hold down R or whatever, like, you know, on the same screen that you respond to things and tell people information, you can also ask them to repeat.
The phrasing of that is such that I never used it until I watched a Let's Play of someone playing it, because it says repeat last command, and I thought that meant I would repeat the last command, the last thing I did. And I didn't want to repeat what I last said, so I never did it. But actually it's asking them to repeat what they asked you to do.
Yeah. I think, something that it does well, and there's lots of things it does well. I mean, it's consistently really atmospheric. But something it does well is it kind of dramatizes, like you say, you know, your worst Siri, your better Siri, there's limited amounts you can do in different situations. It's hard, like, obviously I won't get into specifics, but it does dramatize that changing. Like, it, you know, and it does it without really drawing attention to it. Like, it's very, sort of, low key sci-fi, and it's not, you know, it wears its cinematic influences really openly as Stories Untold did. And, you know, it's certainly shy about them, and therefore it's never going to be the game that has a character shout what's going on. Right. And this is to its detriment and its credit, I think. But one of the ways where it does work, I think, is it allows you to fully kind of play out the process of, becoming more sophisticated and having more agency and making more choices. And that's kind of interesting because, you know, you start out and you can just go, that's a fire. And then later you get, you know, it has somewhere to go from there in terms of, you know, narrative and tone, which I quite like.
I constantly feel a little guilty about the fact that I've been asked to do fairly simple things, and I spend fucking ages panning the very slow camera around the room and, you know, sort of...
Oh, that it's taking you so long to do the basic thing.
Yeah, like, you know, you ask Siri, and the Siri is playing the song that you wanted, but I still haven't found the document.
I mentioned actually, Chris, did you play on PC?
Yeah.
With mouse and keyboard?
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Can you move the cameras as fast as you like with the mouse?
No, it's WASD.
Oh, okay. Right.
So yeah, we should get into things that don't work quite so much. Because it feels like we're kind of being drawn gravitationally towards them. So it is slow. Like, it's probably a 4 to 5 hour game, I think, all told. It's not mega long, but, it's slow going. Like,
it's definitely a sit back game.
Yeah.
Like, I've been playing it on the sofa and it's worked fairly well like that, but I'd aimed to actually play it with my wife. I thought that we would enjoy sort of doing it together. I thought it'd be that kind of game that because whoever's not in control is just going to be going, will you move the camera quicker?
Yeah. So
not that one.
There's some basic things like the camera movement is slow. Like, it's, you know, it's slow, and there's, because of its, I think, investment in these interfaces, there's a delay on everything. Like, everything boots up or kind of chunks into life or requires you to hold a button or to kind of watch as the thing happens. And actually, like, personally, I don't really mind it.
No, I don't actually.
Because I sort of played it in quite a kind of, like, I've been playing a lot of very different sort of less relaxing games recently, and it was quite nice to just sort of engage with it. But it reminds me a lot of the kinds of sci-fi films that it's in love with, in that if you're not in the right mood for them, they can be interminable, right? Do I want to watch this lingering shot for a while? You know, if you're in the right mood to kind of sink into it, it's good. But I think if you're like, get me to the next stage of this, and maybe there's something very specific about it's literally camera movement. In both cases, it's camera movement, but there's something about this camera movement being so slow was the choice made by a director of cinematography on this movie I'm appreciating. And this camera is slow because I'm holding D and it's going,
and it's also like you thinking, oh no, I'm looking the wrong way. I have to now pan it back the way I came.
I was, my problem with it was that, I think I would have wholeheartedly liked it if it was a walking simulator in the sort of Gone Home sense, but it felt like they had a mandate to include things that are technically gameplay. Like, they really felt like they needed to have, for the tasks you're asked to do, you can't really call them mini games because there's never any game to it. And it's as if they're
not really puzzles.
They had to hit some bar of interactivity, like demanding you do stuff, kind of amount of effort and precision and control from you but with never anything interesting going on. There's never any actual control. There's never any actual challenge. There's never any actual anything for your brain to engage with. And so I can watch like a camera move really slowly, and I can passively absorb things that are slow. But when you're also asking me to do stuff, and there's nothing interesting about what I'm doing, and it's just really fucking fiddly. I just have to push the fucking sticks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it's like with mouse and keyboard, but when you're browsing, even just the data visualizer thing where you can combine bits of data, which looks really cool, but to pan around it, you can't use the D-pad, and when you use the stick to pan around it, you have to push the stick to the left and then release it and then push it again to go through every single node.
Oh, right. That's not the case with PC. It's just tap.
It does skip through. It does scroll through if you want, but it'll go too fast if you're kind of wanting to have a look.
I couldn't get that to work.
I think maybe you touched on it there. Like, the issue is it's possible to do the slow camera movement wrong. And I think its weakest moment is when it kind of needs you to find something.
Yeah.
There are moments later on that are a bit, maze-like, and, it has reasons for taking away some of your kind of maps and things, but it asks you to essentially, like, find a thing in the environment. And the kind of game it is, it's never going to be a place that has like a waypoint icon, right? There is no,
there is some kind of waypoint thing.
There is a waypoint
so you can set one yourself when you have the map.
Yeah.
And then once it takes away the map, and I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
I really wish it didn't. And that was why I gave up on it. I eventually just couldn't play any further because it took away the map and I just couldn't fucking find the thing. And I was like half an hour on it and having zero fun. And I just had to give up and watch a Let's Play for the rest of the game. And it was just because it took away the map. If it left me the map, we had a map of this at one point and it took it away. There is a potential story reason for it doing that, but I don't buy it. And yeah, that was just the end of it for me.
Yeah, like, but I think that's when it's at its weakest. Like, I think I know the moment you're referring to it, and I kind of liked it, but I thought it was like, it didn't quite work. Like, the reason I liked not having the map is because it like opens up the station and then quizzes you on it. And so there's an element of like, you know where you need to go. And, because it's, rendered at quite a high level of detail, there are signs and things. Like, there are, the layout of the modular space station has a logic to it. Which is interesting because you're in, 0G 3D space. It is really disorienting. And, so the idea of like, I've gotten to the point now where I used to be the sort of master of this domain, and I could press spacebar to look at a whole map of the whole place and go to any room, I need to, sort of scoot around it at a more low level and navigate by what I understand about this space in an analog sense. Like, from a completely, like, I'm being Sudi now, but like, from that point of view, that I think is a good idea. Like, or it's an interesting idea. Like, I've gone from being this very sort of digital kind of overviewer, oversight to a position of far more analog navigation where it's like, oh, this sign, these modules are in sequential order and this sign means that we're here. I need to get around this corner. And so, but it's like the issue is then it asks you to find a very specific point of interactivity or a specific element in the environment that allows you to bypass an obstacle or something like that. And it's just not particularly intuitive to find that stuff. And it's really easy to spend a lot of time frustrated going the wrong way, or like, because certain types of obstacle have been impassable before, realizing that I had to do the kind of game think of this probably isn't impassable now because I know this is the direction I have to go in. So it's either I'm completely missing something or there's a way around it now that there wasn't before, and that's actually the case. And there's all this kind of like slight fiddliness to it. So I completely get it, but like it's that sort of pain of, I could see what they were trying for with that moment. But yeah, there's also a few more where there were a few other moments where I just didn't find something. I think the other thing is it's inconsistent on what you can and can't scan. Like, there are puzzles that are
laptops. It's so weird when you can and can't scan those. And,
sometimes it is a laptop.
Whether you should.
Yeah, sometimes it is a laptop. Like, that's probably...
Well, I think the implication that some of them are just dead, aren't they?
Yeah, but I found a dead one that I could connect to and scan, but then nothing happened when I did.
Yeah, some of them are dead. Some of them are off, but can be switched on. Some of them are on. And I mean, there's also this like gamey critique that conceit that next to daubing your last message in blood on the wall, the next thing you do is record exactly one message to an entire laptop and then throw that entire laptop away. like one email per laptop is a conceit that only exists in games.
It's like the Kane's lost satchels of observation.
Yeah. So it does that a bit, but so you find these beautifully detailed interiors where every surface has had QR codes stuck to them for some purpose, and people's photos are pinned up and things, but not every object will be interactive. Just the ones that you need, and just the ones you need in that moment, which is good, but turns it into sometimes a bit of a pixel hunting.
But also sometimes you'll have looked at that thing before, thought this isn't interactable, and you won't go back to it in the moment that you need it.
Or you get the kind of the weird thing of going past something that is interactable, but it says unavailable, and then it's like the end of the game. You go, oh, I know where that is, because earlier, I wasn't allowed to touch it, and now I am. And I think, I think there's an example. So there are examples where I tried to play and it ended up sort of went against me, which is so there's a puzzle it teaches you, which is if a system's been overridden, there's a way you can use the schematics to play the sort of invisible maze, essentially.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
I quite like that because you learn the language. Each part of the space station built by a different space agency has different rules for this. And you learn the sort of, the geometric logic for lock, unlock, and so on, these kind of machine code things. It's almost for hardwiring the systems. And that, is one of the systems that it does let you play with. You can, it doesn't let you to do much more than open, close and lock doors. But you can do that. And there's a point in the game where I, felt like in order to do the thing I was being asked to do safely, I should, seal all the doors properly in a room. They didn't ask me to do this, but I just thought I'd do it anyway. I know this was partly roleplay on my part and partly, I don't know what kind of game this is, maybe I will get, some consideration for having done this. So I manually, sealed every door in the room, only to realize that then, the thing I needed to do required something on the other side. And once I had done it, those doors would, for the only time they ever do this in the game, seal themselves.
Oh, right.
And so, obviously maybe it's related to the thing you're doing or something like that, but it was my instinct was right, but my decision to play with the systems of the game in order to execute it was wrong. And that's a bit of a shame because
it's built up this image of this persistent, coherent place where everything is built, spaced around interaction, with these systems, with these fictional systems. And
I think that, I forgot about it when I was saying that I didn't enjoy any of those mini games or that none of them had anything interesting about them. That is the one that I did like, and I think I want more of that. I want the feeling of being like a space technician. One of the things that's bothersome about it is that, you're an AI, and I get that you're not the low level systems. Those aren't you. You're this separate thing, this layer on top of them. But the idea that, the difficulty of interacting with these things is the UI. It's a human-facing UI of literally not even just how it's laid out, but when I need to enter 6 numbers, I have to click the up and down arrows to make the numbers go up or down to get to the number I want. What computer system in the world needs to do that to itself?
See, so for me, my assumption, and this is maybe a very generous assumption, is that you don't have any access to the actual, internal workings of the systems a lot of the time. That is what the schematics are. You have to use the same interface the humans do. And in some kind of dumb machine learning way, you have to figure out what the correct, you know what I mean? Have
you seen that robot arm that presses the I am not a robot capture thing? On the touchscreen.
Yeah, exactly. That's, you play a kind of post-machine learning kind of AI, I guess, where you're intelligent enough to go up arrow, probably going to make the digit go up rather than, 1,000 iterations later you figured out how to do it.
Although there's one particular interaction where I just could not understand what was going on. It's the clamps on the modules.
And
there's a button on it that I just did not realize was interactable, and I was searching around the screen. Then I was searching around the whole area in which I was looking. Have I missed this something? But no, surely there's this screen. And eventually, oh shit, that's a button. Fucking hell.
I'll tell you the thing it reminded me of. and going back to my old, walking simulator dead horse that I like to beat, but like these experiences are a lot like immersive theatre in a bunch of ways. And the kind of great, like, question of almost all immersive theatre faces is how do you communicate how interactive you are? Because, like, some things are very interactive, some things are not interactive at all. When I used to do the company that, I used to work with, we used to have the problem of explaining that we were very interactive. Like, how do you tell people, you know, I literally stood in front of the shows and did a speech at the start of every show to say in no uncertain terms, this is interactive, please do things. And that wasn't a trick, you know, it was true because otherwise audiences didn't really kind of come alive to it. But similarly, and that's because people in that context, in a theatre context, people start usually from a baseline of like, I won't touch anything and I won't do anything. I was going to watch.
You're the passive.
You have the opposite
observer.
problem in video games, I suspect, where people kind of want to fiddle with everything because they're playing a game. And, but what was, and so I enjoyed observation when I calibrated myself for, this is interactive, but it's not there for, it's not a sandbox. It has the look and feel because the interface is so nice of a space station simulator because that is who you are playing, but it's a walking simulator at the end of the day. You know what I mean? You're there to kind of go through the motions and experience the look and feel of it and the story of it, but not to try and reroute the oxygen or do anything like that. You're not there to play, really. And that, you know, like, and it falls apart in the same way that like something like a Punch Drunk show does if you were to just like, you know, open a drawer, take out a key prop and fuck off with it, right? Like there's an element of like, you know, there's the point where you know the actors would come in and go, no. Similarly, the game goes like, I don't really want you to do that, so please do this thing instead. And the frustration comes from moments where, you don't know exactly what it wants you to do in order to trigger the next kind of lovingly staged scenario. So you end up kind of, with the situation that's awkward in like all forms of interactive storytelling where you're kind of looking at the game going like, I'm sorry, this, do I press this? Is this what you wanted me to press? No, do I need to go over here? Like, you know, there's a moment where you need to fly the little sphere, the little camera sphere into someone's hand and I just didn't realize that's what you were supposed to do.
I was stuck in that for ages.
Like,
I was really close to that person. Like, they were asking for light, right?
And
I was
like,
I'm giving them light.
Yeah,
right,
I'm a light.
Here's the fucking light. Really,
I was just looking at the thing. Yeah.
What do you want it on? It could be on this, it could be on that, it could be on that. I'm trying everything. There's no dice.
Yeah. Which is a very Siri problem, to be fair.
It's interesting if this was put into the hands of a big publisher, you know, Devolver, God bless them, they probably don't have the kind of the testing environments that Microsoft or whatever does. I wonder what shape this game would take if it had that, you know, that audience testing that a large publisher has.
The thing is, like, for these issues, I think a lot of people will be suitably impressed by it. Like, I think, you know, it does what it sets out to do, I believe. Like, I'm avoiding talking about plot specifics necessarily, but like, there are enough kind of sufficiently like, ooh, moments. That's my sci-fi noise. Yeah.
No, I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it. I got to say. But like all of this stuff is there. You know, I don't think there's ever a moment where I'm completely focused on the story. Like if you compare it to Solaris or whatever, you know, those kind of films that it's kind of, it's, you know, 2001 and, you know, it's never going to have the intent. You know, where you wonder whether games by introducing interactivity can get some of the intensity that's in a full good film. I constantly have a sense of, am I doing it right? What do I do now? Oh God. And like, that is probably 40% of my brain activity.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I go, no, really, I should be thinking, the humans, what is going to happen to the humans?
Yes.
I got stuck for a long time because I looked at I talked about a hatch, you know, the response interface. Like I was going around and I was just like, moving around the station and I brought that interface up either by accident or for something else. I noticed, I can mention this hatch. So I mentioned this hatch and the lady said, I can't open that for you right now because of this thing that's going on. And so I never talked about a hatch again Because he was like pissed off at me. She's like, yeah, I know, because we can't help you because of this, but we just explained to you.
Okay, fine. I'll shut up about the hatch then.
Literally, the only way to progress in that situation is to talk about a different hatch. There's a different hatch you have to look at and report. And if you don't do that, you can't progress.
Yeah, it's it's definitely an element of when it works well, it really works well. And then when it doesn't, it has the anxiety of someone acting at you at a secret cinema showing in 2001. Like, it's like, oh, what do you want me to do? Am I a spaceman?
I'm going to be embarrassed. Not drunk enough for this. I would say that the performances that I've had so far, like voice performances, have been like really fucking good.
Yeah.
Like, as they were in Stories Unknown, Untold, sorry.
Yeah, they are good.
And also the motion capture, like we talked earlier on about, like, oh my goodness, they've got animated people in this. It's not top flight stuff, but it works. It definitely works, and it isn't jarring and ugly and horrible. It's good.
I think it's both. It's probably helped and also more impressive because of the fact that it's in a 0G environment. So when people, if you watch someone move from one part of the station to another, they are kind of realistically propelling themselves off surfaces and things. But I think also that probably frees them from like having to have characters that walk. Yeah. Like, it's interesting, like, it's just clever. Like, it's like, it's, watching someone reach up for a handle and then like, pull themselves along and propel themselves and then float through the air. It looks very realistic. And I think one of the things that really sells a human character in an environment is, how they, where their feet land and how they touch things as they move past them, like people do, rather than the walk cycle of a NPC in a video game. And this gets around that, but without having to solve the problem, which is clever.
How did you guys feel about this versus Tacoma?
That's interesting.
It's interesting. I think
tell a story about a space station.
There's a cheeky little Tacoma reference in this as well, I think.
Is there?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a reference, but one of the characters, when you get the personnel files, from Tacoma, Washington. Oh, right. And I just wondered, like, you could have picked anywhere in America.
Of all the cities.
Yeah, you could have picked anywhere, so I think you picked Tacoma for a reason.
I think,
they're very different stories.
Yeah, they're so different, and the control of the story in Tacoma is so absolute, it's so completely designed. Every narrative thread that happens in that game is being obsessively scripted and, layered and that kind of thing in this sort of incredibly knurled way. This is that loose, asking you to have. It's much looser. This is
observation.
Yeah, observation.
That's interesting. Well, the thing I had with Tacoma that I really liked that I didn't have with this was the immersive theatre thing. It was the thing I got from Sleep No More, which was, you follow a conversation and somebody leaves it and you carry on following conversation because you want to hear what that is, but there's part of your brain that's like, oh, I wonder where this guy goes. And then next time you scrub through the thing and you go back and you follow that person and they go off and you realize, oh, well, that was happening. This was happening. Yeah. And you're exploring the story in a very, that felt kind of, maybe loose is not the word, but very, like, I'm exploring this thing in my own way and discovering it in whatever order and however I want.
It's analog. I would describe that as kind of like an analog feeling thing where I remember, Tacoma very much feels like a punch drunk show but it's one where you get the aggregate experience of going 16 times, delivered via the rewind and the fact that you can move around physically.
Yeah, in a very efficient way.
Yeah. Whereas this feels more like it's much more participatory. One thing that occurred to me playing it actually is I think it would have also made for a really good VR experience. Yeah. Like, all of its systems are very VR friendly.
Although you'd have to move your head very, very slowly.
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah, that's true. They can't restrict you on that shit.
Please move your head with the appropriate reverence for this stark
If you move it too fast, like the screen just goes black.
Yeah. Appreciate the peril. Okay. Like, sort of very slowly zoom out of a very deep star field with your actual head while going vroom.
I think the other comparison I'd make is that I think the story here, maybe the storytelling or the story here was more focused, and I just followed it start to finish and I was engrossed in it and I just wanted to know what happened next, and that was a sort of degree of compellingness that I didn't get from Tacoma. Tacoma's big sprawling thing of, like, is it 8 characters or a lot of different characters all with their own stories, and they're quite separate. They do, it ties it all together at the end, and there's there's a big kind of plot thing. But for a lot of it, it's just like, here's 8 different people, all with their own individual relationships and stuff.
Which is the kind of like the center of that's the story. The story isn't really the kind of the plot. It's about the characters.
Yeah. And there's no one person I was mega invested in or especially interested in. It was kind of this big ensemble thing, which everything was kind of interesting, but nothing was super compelling. Whereas this sticks to like, here's, initially one character, eventually 2 or 3, and then...
Well, it's interesting because you look at the Walking Dead, so Tacoma feels very much like a radio play in that way, and...
That's the Dear Esther.
And Dear Esther, and then the Village one by the same people.
But Everyone's Gone to the Rapture.
Also
Edith Finch.
And they are like radio shows, and this feels like a film, actually.
That's the thing. It just occurred to me that I think that's the big difference. It's one of the first experiences like this, which is not what happened here, but what is happening.
And you are in the happening.
Yeah, you are, and it's a very clever way of positioning.
You are Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. Station AI, Mork Whirlbag online.
You called him Mork Whirlbag.
Mork Whirlbag.
Mork Whirlbag is
modern Whirlbag.
Oh, you ruined it. Infinite Whirlbag. Basically, I mean, it's interesting, but I think you could probably sum up at least one major set piece in observation through the entire phrase Call of Duty Infinite Whirlbag. What are we talking about? I'm going to put Mork Whirlbag in a game at some point.
Do you think that we might have been the first people to ever say that? Because
that's right.
It must be, because like if you'd come up with it, you'd want to share
if we hadn't just said
well, it would have been until this podcast.
As and when you make immersive sim with passwords, Tom, your 0451 should be Mork Whirlbag. Good. I think that's done justice to sedate, artistically credible sci-fi adventure observation. Tom, you've been playing something that doesn't star Mork Whirlbag.
No. Although that wouldn't sound out of place in this game, which is Druid Stone. Speaking of not great names, Druid Stone, The Secret of the Menhir Forest. Like all of that is fantasy word salad.
Secret of Menhir Forest would work better.
Yeah,
it's
the
Menhir
extra
as in the standing
really
stone.
There's 2 thers.
There's 2 thers, yeah.
It's definitely Menhir like the standing stone, not Menhir like the
Just Menhir. Menhir in the forest.
Yeah, I believe the standing stone version. And it's from the Grimrock people. Although weirdly, they founded a new company.
Druid Stone. The Grimrock people did the Druid Stone.
Yep. But they founded a whole new company to separate themselves from Grimrock.
And this is called...
we did Grimrock and Grimrock 2, but this is not that. It's a whole new thing. It's called Control Alt Ninja, the company.
Control Alt Granite.
No. Anyway,
Control
it's
Alt Ninja. That's terrible.
It's a fantasy tactics RPG that's of special interest to me because it is the closest game I've seen to what we're making with Tactical Breach Wizards in terms of format. It is between Into the Breach and XCOM. It's bigger scale and less chess-like than Into the Breach, but a lot simpler and a lot clearer than XCOM, which is exactly the kind of middle ground we're going for. It's story-driven and kind of character-driven. You have 3 characters who are extremely bland. Fighter man, healer ranger woman, and
always the woman.
Small mage.
Small mage.
The small mage is
is it actual child?
It's not a human. It's a weird sprite type thing with a round head. And he's the quirky, funny one.
As in like a fey creature or like a 2D image of a game character?
A fey creature.
Okay.
And he's the comedy one, is he?
Yeah. Although I skipped the dialogue. And after, I gave it a chance and I was like, okay, I don't want to hear more of this. And fuck me, there's a lot of, initially when it launched, you couldn't skip a whole cutscene. You could only skip individual lines of dialogue. And I'm clicking, I used a technique I've only ever used in button mashing minigames before, where I take both hands on the mouse so I can hammer the button like up lightning fast. So I'm skipping like 68 dialogues a second, and it's still taking me like 10 minutes to get through it.
The third-party Xbox controller turbo button. Like maximum no thank you, writers.
Just that nanosecond that was on screen was too much. And they've now added an ability, like, if you hit escape twice, it skips the whole scene, which I used copiously. I don't hate the writing, it just wasn't interesting to me, and it wasn't what I was there for. But yeah, so it's grid-based, and it's quite XCOM-like, except that there's no chance to hit, you always hit. You are doing, like, you'll have basic attacks, but really the warrior is the only one who's going to use his much. Like, your mage can stab with their knife, but that's not really going to help very much. They obviously want the ranger healer woman to be a healer. Like, most of her skills are healing, but she has some rangery stuff, and she's the only one with a bow. So I spec'd her as a ranger. You get to, like, choose, you get to place gems in various skills, and you also unlock new skills, and you can kind of control the build in a way that I like. That's most of the draw of the game for me, was like, ooh, when I get some more points, I can push this character further in the direction I want them to go in. And I put everything. I was just like, fuck this goddamn woman healer stereotype. I want her to be just a damage dealing monster. And I'm going to do everything I can. I put all my points into, because the points you get, you can spend on anyone. So, although they all level up from your missions and they all unlock new, like, abilities, to add to their skill set at roughly the same rate. The ones that you upgrade are the ones that really count, and the upgrade currency is one you can spend on anyone. So I just invested almost all of them on her. And the key thing is, like, it's very small numbers, like Into the Breach, and so the warrior's, like, basic sword attack does 3 damage, and the ranger's bow only does 2 damage. The mage's range attack does 3 damage. It's just literally, she's the healery woman, so she doesn't get to do as much damage as everyone else. And I was just like, fuck that, I'm going to make her do more damage. A lot of creatures have exactly 3 health, or they'll have exactly 6 health, and so doing 2 damage is just frustratingly, like, not right. And I got her, like, a new bow that was, came with a volley skill that lets her shoot 2 targets at once, and it also does knockback on every single hit. Which is actually really cool, because you can do things like shoot an explosive barrel so that it gets knocked back and then blows up in front of 2 other enemies and does 5 damage to both of them and kills them both, which is really cool. And then I eventually unlocked the volley ability myself, so I also had some uses of it from that. So I had, like, 2 uses of volley now. And then I put some gems into it to get an extra use, and then I put some gems in it to get, so that it pierces armor. And another gem in it to make it poison people, which means they take extra damage from every other attack they take after that. And then there's another skill that anyone can get that just makes their next attack do 1 more damage. So I put loads of gems into giving her loads of uses of that, so that she had enough. Eventually she had 4 uses of that, 4 uses of volley, 4 uses of another cool ability. And so that's enough that you can pretty much always use it. Like, missions are not very long, so you probably do more than 4 attacks, but maybe you do 6 attacks in a mission that goes well. And so she is able to, for 4 of those, hit 2 targets, poison them both, pierce 2 levels of armor, and do, I guess, 3 damage, but with knockback, so if they're against a wall, it can be 4 damage. And finally, like, she's just about a damage dealer. And so eventually it worked. It felt like the game was fighting me every turn, because every time she leveled up, we'd be like, which of these 4 healing abilities do you want? Would you like to upgrade your resurrection, or your healing, or your super healing, or your mega other healing, or you make the other people stronger, or sacrifice your turn to make everyone else good? No, I want her to actually fucking do something. So that was my journey with this game, basically. I really want it to do well, because it's so similar in format to what we're making, and I want to know that this is like a good, that the market for this kind of game is big. But at the same time, it is very generic. It looks lovely. It's really beautifully drawn and it just has a nice like clarity to it and just kind of feels
3D
inviting.
or
yeah.
2D?
The UI I think is good. Kind of feels like it's not getting in your way, but also gives you lots of information. I intensely miss the rewind ability that we have in our game because we have, so Into the Breach has one rewind per turn. This game just copies Into the Breach system 100%. You have one rewind per turn. Sorry, no, you don't. Do you? Yeah, maybe you do. But you can also undo moves for free. So if you've only moved but you didn't act, you can undo that. But in Tactical Breach Wizards, you can undo every action and every move all the way back to the start of your turn for free as many times as you like, and you can try everything you want. And when you're learning a game, oh my god, you desperately want that. I was just like 8 times in a row, I made a fatal mistake that screwed my whole mission because I didn't understand a rule about the game, and I just had to restart the mission. I was like, oh, I've just completely fucked it, because I didn't know that, even just like how they show health, there'll just be 5 hearts, then a gap, and then 2 hearts. I'm like, does that mean they regenerate 2 health every mission, or is that 2 health armor? Because they do have armor, but I didn't see that stat anywhere on the health bar. And it turns out that's just so that when they have like 17 health, you can look at the groupings of 5 and see that it's 3 lots of 5 plus 2, therefore it's 17. So it has nothing to do with mechanics at all. And there's just loads of stuff like that, loads of rules like that were just a pain in the ass to learn the hard way. But it was also, it has a really bad snowballing problem because those gems you get that level up your abilities, you only get them from completing extra optional objectives, and they're all difficult and just an extra pain in the ass on top of what you're trying to do. So if you're finding the game hard, you'll get 0 of them. I played on medium, I couldn't do any optional objectives, I got no gems, so I couldn't get better, so I fell even further behind the curve, so the game got harder, and it was already too hard. So I immediately put it on easy, and then on easy, I can always do the secondary objectives, so I always get the gems, so I get my people, so I do better, and I get even further ahead of the curve, which is just a bad system. Just stop making systems like that. But to be honest, that's kind of, I was alright with that in the end because I just wanted a shitload of gems to make my ranger healer to be actually good rather than a bad stereotype. Basically, I enjoyed the whole thing pretty much. It was very satisfying. It's all the abilities you get kind of it's fun to figure out the optimal combinations of those.
Can you respec?
Yes. Freely. In fact, you can just take gems out of anything and put them into anything else. Buying new equipment is really cool. It's interesting, although it's still a snowballing problem. But getting new stock in the shop, the way you do that is you find crates in the level that have that stock in them. And if you find that crate, then when you come back to base, the shop has new stock. And if you don't, you don't. Which is weird because it means like, if their stock was in that crate, why did we give it to the shopkeeper so that he could sell it back to us? Like, I can't afford half this stuff. I can only afford like one of these items. We just gave them 5. Do we not get like, some of these just for free? But the weapons themselves and the items themselves are like really significant upgrades. One of them was like, every time I get hit, I drop a heart. And a heart is just like a free health point. So it's like, if they did 1 damage to me and I dropped the heart, I do get that back by just walking 1 space to pick it up. Another one, that I put on my warrior was a thing where it actually reduces his health, but it gives him 1 point of armor. So every incoming damage he is reduced by 1. He also had just got to like his nearly maximum level, and he could have inherently just 1 point of armor. He's just like that tough. And reducing all incoming damage by 2 is insanely good. Things are only ever really doing 3 damage at most to you. Most things are doing 2. And when he is attacked, he does 1 damage back to them. It's like a barbed armor or something. And this game has attacks of opportunity. So if you're in melee range of someone and you move at all, they get a free attack on you. And that's the kind of the bane of your life for most of the game. That's what another reason I had to restart the mission multiple times. Like, I didn't know I was going to get hit if I did that. Fuck.
If you only listened to the jokey wizard boy, he would have told you all about it.
Yeah,
Mork
maybe.
Whirlbag.
Good old Mork.
Yeah, like I say, it would not be out of place in this game. But so that led to a really cool emergent tactic, which was, my warrior just doesn't take any, like, you fucking gargoyles cannot hurt him. You do 2 damage, I have 2 armor. You will never hurt me.
How is the difficulty scale? Like, so in medium difficulty, would it be doing 3 damage? Like 4 damage?
I don't know, because I only played 1 mission on medium and I immediately put it down. Easy mode works, which is a point in its credit. Like Mutant Year Zero, its easy mode is not fucking easy. It's insanely difficult. So good good on Druid Stone for having an easy mode that's actually easy. But this barbed armor thing, this kind of trash enemy, not even like a super low level enemy, like one that's a threat to everyone else, they cannot damage my warrior. And if they attack him, they take 1 damage. And the game has attacks of opportunity. So every time you move when you're in range of them, they attack you. So if there's 3 of them, and you can also, another unusual,
back and forth.
Exactly. Like this game also has an unusual feature where movement points can be spent individually. You only get 1 action, but you'll move, if you have 5, if you can move 5 squares, you can move 5 times 1 square each. Right. Like, and so I just did that. Just like 3 of them like that. I'm just like, I've moved into melee range of all 3 of you. If I take 1 step left, all 3 of you attack me, and I take no damage, you all take 1 each. And then I go, I'm actually going to go back to where I was, you know.
I forgot something.
Let's get them. And then it just wipes them all out. I just killed like 3 things for no actions because they all killed themselves on me. There's something that worries me a little bit is after I finished it, really felt just over and done. You can replay missions. I know there's some stars I didn't get on certain ones of them. And I liked it. I like this game. I kind of want to play more of it. And it wasn't short. It was like at least 8 hours long. I think probably like 12 hours. So it's substantial, but there's something that feels kind of throwaway about it. Like I'm just done and it's just over. And I don't want my game to feel like that. So I really want to think about like, I mean, what I feel like I want from it is just some kind of endless challenge mode where just like keep throwing enemies at me and let me find
let me walk about in front of gargoyles.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah, that tactic was fucking cool. I want to know, like, if they're doing 3 damage at me, so I am taking 1 damage, but I'm still doing 1 damage back, is that worth it? I mean, is there situations where that's cool? And, you know, yeah, like I said, I was playing on easy, so I was never really pushed to my limit. And it would be cool just to find out what that limit is and just have some kind of, you know, I'd like a daily challenge in this. I'd like something, even when I was playing it, even before I'd finished the story missions, I wanted some way to just like, let me just test this team. Like now that I've put these points into this and I'm trying this build, give me some arena thing I can go into and just kill as much as I possibly want to see if this works well. And also another thing that I think makes it feel disposable that I hope to avoid is every mission is very custom. Like every mission has a unique victory condition. Every mission has some unique mechanic. Like on this one, there's all these bombs that are going to blow up and you've got to defuse them. On this one, there's a giant ice demon that's following you around. And that, it's variety, which is a positive thing. Compared to XCOM, it's doing a much better job of variety. Like every XCOM mission is basically the same, except the zombie ones in War of the Chosen. And this is the other end of the spectrum, I think, where every mission is so different that it just kind of feels like the core game isn't there. It's just a series of novelty rides that you go on. And it wasn't that I didn't get to engage with the combat system because I did, but it was lacking a kind of core game that I could go back to.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem of like wanting the normal endless mode to just play with the systems in. Like there's sort of,
I guess that's what I want in RTSs. It's kind of like an RTS campaign. Like that was always my, that was always my complaint about like StarCraft 2. Like they're doing really unique, in-depth stuff or really specific stuff with every mission, but I just wanted to sit back and just play a proper match with my base and their base and see who wins.
Yeah, right. Although the StarCraft 2 defense, it has those modes.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I think that's an interesting kind of problem for RTSs or strategy games generally is like sort of puzzle missions or, you know, single player type things are really good for getting people in and making it clear what they can do. But it doesn't feel like the end of a system like that. Like if you created a suitably interesting strategic sandbox, then the end goal is presumably just being able to take your hands off the wheel as a designer and say, just play with these pieces and they'll still be fun. Rather than requiring a conceit or a meta structure or something like that.
Yeah. You've been playing more Mordhau?
Mordhau, yeah, I have been playing quite a lot. I just play Mordhau now, basically. How now, Mordhau?
I saw that amazing character select thing.
Oh, where is part of the world?
Yeah, like I figured that out now. There's one particular map where the character select is just a little distant island. You can get on there and just like twat about in the background.
And the video I saw was like someone had done that. So it's a view of the character select screen from the perspective of someone who's choosing their character and some asshole is showing up next to it. But what they've chosen to do is just really passively aggressively play the loot to the screen.
It's got a good loot.
Yeah.
It's got a loot where you can play 8 different notes and that is sufficient for people to stand in dual lobbies playing Despacito. So like, to briefly recap, if it was 2 episodes ago, I guess I introduced it, but Mordhau is the kind of detailed medieval combat, sword fighting multiplayer game. I like it a lot. I love its systems. I had pretty big reservations about the tenor of its community in some regards. Since then, what I've kind of discovered is dual servers. So actually I was kind of under the mistaken impression previously that a dual mode was coming. And what I didn't realize is that it's just kind of been invented by the community. So if you filter by deathmatch, like there's a deathmatch, the mode, there's battle royale and there's like a co-op against the AI mode that I've literally never played because I just play the competitive stuff. And then there's like deathmatch and team deathmatch, which I just kind of ignored because you know what they are. Actually, the majority of deathmatch servers are dual servers because that is the way to enact this. So it's usually a small map, up to 24 people, 12 to 24 people on the server. And, because it's like a vote kick system, people will vote to kick anyone who FFAs, who free-for-alls, basically anyone who just runs into a fight. The appropriate thing to do, because the game has an extensive list of emotes, and I fucking love this. This is where things click for me in sword fighting games, from Jedi Knight through Blade Symphony and other games I've been into. You walk up to somebody, and then there's a sword salute emote that you have to unlock. So most people don't have that, but there's a sword twirl emote, like a flourish, that everyone has. So normally it's a flourish to indicate while looking at someone to say, I would like to duel you. And if they flourish back, then you fight. And so the actual score, like it's a deathmatch map. So she's like first to 30 kills and then the map rotates. That's not the point. The point is just hanging out and dueling people, basically, and experimenting with loadouts and all of this stuff that the game does really well. And, a bit like I was saying earlier that I think, I appreciate that actually it's possible to do kinds of online game that just weren't possible before. This feels like one of them in quite a low key way. I've mentioned it, the detail of the combat system and the kind of the parries and the feints and the attack morphs and the chambering and the fact that all of that kind of, it's physicsy in a way, like despite the fact that it's constrained in a way that prevents it from being complete slapstick. But, you still have 8 directions of attacks and it still matters and there's still complex interactions between things feels really good. And, the fact that you can have that happening at that level of detail between like 12 different duels that are happening simultaneously feels like a kind of meaningful, escalation of what's been done in that sort of genre previously. The other thing that's cool about it is there's like, you can really like the characters, even though it has the problem I've outlined where everyone is just a beefy white man basically who grunts, they're quite expressive because it maps your mouse movements and your movements of your swords onto the game in a pretty close to one-to-one fashion, and you have quite close granular control over, picking up and dropping items and things like that, and granular damage and stuff as well. So there's like, you can nod, you can shake your head in an analog way, not tied to the emote system. And then there's all the emotes and things. And then voice emotes and things like that. And it's actually, the counterpoint, I think, to its community problems, particularly in like the big, massive 64 player servers, is the sort of daft moments that come in a dual environment, particularly when people are behaving themselves. You do encounter dickheads in that environment. People who are either messing it up for other people who are just dickheads. But like, I had a really, really good fight with someone earlier, and something that can happen if you run low on stamina is you can be disarmed. And often, sometimes, if you get disarmed in a duel, you're fair game, right? Like, you probably just get killed. But I got disarmed, and my current loadout is like a mixture of light and medium armor, a bastard sword, which can be either held one-handed or two-handed. I tend to use it one-handed, and a dagger. And I have the dagger because I have a dodge talent that allows me to sidestep. Basically, if I do a sideways jump, I do like a dash, like a short dash. And there's lots of really cool considerations. A lot of people prefer like two-handed swords or long weapons. And so you need to be able to stay within their range. But like, because I'm not wearing particularly heavy armor, like if a poleaxe catches me in the side of the head, my head comes off and then I don't have a head anymore. And that is bad. So there's a lot of like trying to stay in close range and doing parries and dodge and things. And that consumes my stamina really quickly. And so there's a danger of getting disarmed. So the dagger is there as a kind of like hold that weapon, basically. And this happened earlier today, actually, where I was dueling a guy who had heavy armor, big two-handed sword, which is kind of standard loadout. And sword comes down and I parry it, but my bastard tool goes flying up my hands, like at a kind of particular angle based on the attack. And it's that kind of granularity that makes it feel cool. and I dash backwards to try and get out of the way, basically, and draw the dagger. And then I realized that he'd stopped, and he turns and he looks at my bastard sword on the floor, then looks at me, and then looks back at it and nods. And then, and I just go and pick it up again, and then he does the sword salute, and then we just keep going. And it was like, and that was his choice to let me do that, to like say pick up the sword, and then we fought for another 2 minutes, I think, before I think he won that one. But it was really,
I thought you were going to say you threw the dagger at him.
yeah, I've done that as well. You can throw the dagger at people, but like, I've actually done that. Someone earlier, dashed backwards out of the fight, ran, drew a crossbow and turned, and I managed to throw the dagger into his forehead before he could fire it. And it was just like, it's so good. So I've been playing that a lot, and I'm crawling towards intermediate at it, I think. Like, good players are very good. I still feel very early on the journey, but that's, it's been like really consistently, a lot of fun. And also it's nice to then be able to jump into the frontline mode, which is the more battlefield-like sort of big mass combat thing. And then apply that kind of drilled, like the character I built for myself for duels, I don't tend to use in frontline because the chance of taking an arrow in the side of the head out of nowhere is too high to risk the armor. Like, I still wear a helmet because always wear a helmet, kids, is really good advice, for sword fighting and riding a bike. But like, I got a couple of good gifts out of a guy who wasn't wearing a helmet and struggled to read like a particular attack that I would do with a two-handed sword when I was still using a Zweihander. Because there's lots of things you can do. Like, so when you attack from a direction, that's a canned animation, basically. You know, it starts and then it swings in front of you. But because you have, rotational control of your torso, you can slow down and speed up canned attacks by how you position yourself. So you can start an attack. Let's say I start an attack facing you, but then turn away from you and then turn back towards you. That might really fuck up your sense of when that attack's actually going to land because I move my canned animation. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, I found, a particular, that's often the thing that catches you off guard. And there's just a guy at dueled 3 times in a row who wasn't wearing a helmet and who got caught up by that every single time. And every single time he took his head off in one go. And it's just this amazing kind of series of like, oh, it's happened again. Like, cause you don't even expect it. Cause if you're really trying to finesse the speed, you don't even really see the attack connect because you're not looking in the right direction when the sword is actually in the place, but you just sort of like, you hear the kind of like wet slap of like sword hitting man, and then you get the kill feed, and then the head goes flying past. And it's like, it's really good. It's the best first person melee combat system I think I've ever played, with, I think. Like, I'd love to see more done with it. But yeah, like I was going to say, it's really fun to then go into the big battle mode and apply some of that stuff. Cause occasionally, a fight breaks into a one-on-one and you can actually apply some of that dual logic, and, being able to like win in that environment feels really, really good. I've also been playing loads of the Battle Royale, although the Battle Royale is, I think, strangely unrewarding in the way that all Battle Royale is, in that you can just spawn next to no chests whatsoever and be chased by people with swords and murdered. You can spawn next to a chest and it's only got like one massive shield in it, and so you're a turtle now. A helpless turtle. But that can also provide some really, really, really good moments. Like I got killed earlier by a man on a horse with a rake because he pressed the button. I didn't realize you could tilt with a rake. Cause if you're on a horse going at maximum speed with a spear or a lance, you can press F and you go into a couched position. So you're like a joust, right? You've got it under your arm, at which point it does loads of damage. And this guy was charging me, and I had a sledgehammer, and he was on a horse with a rake, and we were both naked.
Naked workmen.
Welcome to my dream. This weird dream I had. And, I got ready to like try and bash the horse's face in with a sledgehammer. I guess, 'cause that was my plan for this scenario. And then as he's charging towards me, because I assumed he was going to swing the rake, but then as he was charging towards me, he went into like a jousting tilt position with the rake, and the rake just caught me in the face, and I was dead. And it was like, that was an experience. That is the more entertaining ways I've died in a battle royale.
In that scenario, presumably the prongs of the rake are not really like stabbing you. It's kind of hitting you like flat on, right?
Yeah, I got hit by the sort of the knuckles.
The sheer speed and force.
Got punched by a rake somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, one of my favorite, creepypastas. No, it's good, basically, is what I'm saying. It remains very, very good. And, I will happily 1v1 anyone and lose.
Shall we do some questions?
Yes, absolutely. Tom, have you stopped being bothered by a moth?
Yep.
Good.
It's rolling down.
Excellent. Our first question this week comes from Kane, who writes, "Hello. You commonly field questions in the format, what is the best noun in gaming? I'd like to ask, what is the best noun in gaming? Regards, Kane." I'm glad someone else is paying attention to the format we get questions in, because we do. Best nouns. I mean, there's a lot of obvious candidates. Gun.
Wow. Going straight for the main one.
Cart.
Yeah.
That's another good one.
I think I was thinking more in terms of the sound of the word, because my first thought was in Void Bastards. I recently learnt that a foon is worth 2 slag. I was just like, well, I like all those words.
Yeah. I think that's, there's a good case to be made for the best jargon. Definitely.
Yeah.
Best sounds.
I was enjoying the descriptions of the jargon, I think, in Void Bastards, because, it's like calling an enemy a screw as well is redolent of, I don't know quite what at this point.
Supergiant are good at nouns, especially Bastion with their gas fellas. And,
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. You've gone more for the actual vocabulary of games, whereas I'm in the sort of
the thing of
like
games.
a macro kind of level.
I think,
sort of what
I think
are the
mine
key
is
nouns?
like, given this thing, is this a good name for it?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think. What are the really important ones? I think actually, having said gun and cart, I'm now struggling to think of anything else games do.
Well,
Door.
If it can be a full phrase, then obviously mine is grappling hook.
That's like a grappling. That's a verb and a noun.
It is,
An
yeah.
adjective.
It's an
Is it adjective?
It's adjectival, right? Because it's descriptive.
Yeah. Obviously grapple is a verb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was it
Grapple is
adverb?
in this house, grapple is a verb.
Stealth is a noun.
Yep, that's true. Let's think. Bomberman.
Just like the name of any game.
That's a proper name.
Yeah.
It's Mr. B Man.
Can we have
Brian
hyphenated.
Ommerman.
It's hyphenated, but can we have Die Hard Man?
Yeah, what else is good? Wizard, I would probably be remiss if I didn't say wizard.
Oh, yeah.
I think, you stand to profit directly from just the fact that people love
Stand
that
to profit
word.
directly from wizards.
You do. You stand to, well,
Not
no,
ashamed
more
to say
specifically
it.
from the fact that people like that word.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah, we are playing on that.
if you'd called it, like, tactical breach mages, you
Yeah.
would have lost, I would say, 25% of the value
There
of the
are,
project.
yeah, a lot of people have replied with like clever joke titles that are like good puns, but they're all like too good. It's too slick. It's got to sound slightly awkward and dumb.
I think
Like
maybe
a real
like,
wizard.
I was avoiding saying wizard in the first part of this answer because I didn't want to like fall into something I say all the time. But actually, I think there's something kind of wonderful about the word wizard because it's so silly.
Yeah.
Like it is.
There's something so self-serious about a mage. If there was magic
Yeah.
in the world and someone came up to you and said,
I'm a
so
mage."
how are you? What are you up to these days? I'm a mage. You'd think, oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you
Me,
and
an
your
intellectual.
mage, your mage education.
It's like when people in games media describe themselves as journalists.
or essay writers.
Yeah.
Have you read my latest essay?
Yeah.
You wrote about fucking Bomberman, mate.
For man and wizards.
Is there a word that means for writer what wizard means for user of magic? Is there? I don't think there is, because, like,
No.
I wish there was.
No.
Word idiot.
That's, I think there are a load of people try for that and they all sound really
Accidentally
effective.
self-serving,
Like,
yeah.
like, I'm a humble scribbler of
Yeah.
thoughts.
Maybe you
Jemble.
can just use for what the publication or publications you work for, like,
Yeah.
as
I
that-
write for is the way.
PC Gamer, like that is quite wizardly.
Yeah, the
Hack.
the press sneak fuck is the actual,
that is actually the correct answer.
Yeah, the way you would express this honorably if you were a wizard, I guess, would be to say, like, rather than go for any of those purely definitive or, self-identifying terms, to say, wouldn't never say, like, I'm a wizard, I'm a mage. You'd say, like, I throw fireballs, maybe twice a day. You know what I mean? But then I have to go to sleep.
Your Twitter bio would start with fireball thrower, dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I write about games. No, I don't play them.
I have, one, I can cast, transmogrification once every long rest. But no more frequently than that, unless it's a weekend.
No, I'm a mage, a mighty mage.
Yeah, exactly. Well, mage is biblical, right? Like,
fuck mages.
Fuck mages. Fuck mages, the risque sequel to Tactical Breach Wizard.
It's a DLC, but it's rated differently.
Wow.
Well, I keep saying, everyone keeps making these XCOM-like games or whatever games where you can't kiss each other. Like in Fire Emblem, it was the problem with Battletech. It'll be the problem with Tactical Breach Wizards. I suspect you've got some time to fix it, but not yet. Fuck mages. That's the, mages has that biblical connotation. Wizard, I think, is, I actually don't know what the etymology of wizard is. It's just, I think it's got a kind of,
I really want to know. Is it old or is it new?
I don't know. It's in a wonderful
Did J.R.
place.
Tolkien kind of make it up?
Do you think it's related to like Gee Whiz and things being whiz bang?
Maybe. Like,
Willikers.
It's just sort of, cause it's been sort of tainted forever by being something that it denotes things that 50s schoolboys thought were cool. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I really admire Diablo 3's balls for calling the mage class just wizard. It's just straight up, it's just a fucking wizard. Whether you're a man or a woman, it's just a wizard. That is
you're a wizard, yeah. Like, I think, cause
you're a wizard player.
There's a place for witch and warlock in this kind of pantheon of nouns, but I think wizard connotates a certain, like, out and out, just, I'm a fucking wizard. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's sort of no nonsense, even though it's all nonsense, which is a kind of hard thing to hold in your head. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a no nonsense approach to being like a middle class person with their own library and a bathrobe. It's kind of incredible. Where does it come from, Alex?
Well, my extensive research has turned up that it's from the Middle English, for wise. Wizard is,
of course.
Wise.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Wizard.
That makes sense.
And ard, probably, like,
He's wise and hard.
yeah.
Wise hard Harry.
You're wise and hard, Harry. Yeah.
As a slang word meaning excellent, it is recorded from 1922.
Gosh.
I looked up mage, and it's
To be honest, Wise Hard Harry sounds like a character from Fuck Mages.
Wizard, mage is actually older. It's from 1400.
Wise Hard Harry sounds like a Guy Ritchie character.
It comes from magus.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it?
Fuck mages.
Just raises further questions to me.
So, it's wizard, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the noun of games.
Yeah.
Stealth wizard, if we were allowed to combine two.
Well, so, you've successfully utilized gun.
Yep.
You've
gun right in the
You've
title.
got wizard coming. How did heat do? Or signature? Which was the more key, what would you say was the more key noun?
It's tough because it's trying to evoke, so it's called that, like, heat was an actual mechanic at one point. Technically still is in the finished game, thank you very much. It's still in there. But, like, signature doesn't work by itself at all.
Do you have to prove your identity at any point in the game?
No,
You could put that in.
we kept trying to work it in some way, like, when someone's locked onto you, they're locked onto your heat signature. And when you're tracking someone, when you get a mission target and it's marked on your HUD, it's because you have their heat signature. And
When you get a mission,
Is that the only way you're allowed to say heat signature?
heat signature.
yeah. Well, why don't you, when you take a mission, you write your name on the screen?
I was like, I'm such a literalist that I wanted the logo to be like heat in big block capitals and signature in like a scrawly like thingy.
It just occurred to me that if you
Thank God I have John.
if you got those key nouns, you actually end up with the phrase gun heat wizard, which is either a very good name for an anime or a shoot 'em up. You know, if you ever want to make like a kind of Ikaruga or R-type sort of game, I think gun heat wizard would be the...
There's a name I had written down that I just liked as a name that I thought would be a good name for a game that I recently found out is a game. Blood Pressure.
Nice.
Just heard that in isolation and thought, yeah, if you read that the other way, it sounds cool. John has pointed out that our titles are getting one word longer each time. He's worried about, he has to make like the Steam store widget things that like tiny little boxes that contain the full name of the game. He's like, can you add some more fucking words, please?
We can't go to 4. We can't go.
Look, there's a game on Steam.
Fuck Mage.
There's a game in Steam called Sometimes I Have to Believe That Reality Isn't Real So That I Can Cope With It, or something like that. Like
Right,
it's
yeah.
literally 20 words.
Yeah. There's also the most egregiously named game on Steam. A reckless disregard for gravity. You alphabetical masterminds.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Reneko, who writes, Dear Crate and Crow Barista, over the course of playing the heat signature dailies, my playstyle has completely transformed, going from relatively normal play to using drastically different control scheme to take advantage of odd interactions. How often are regular and competitive play completely different beasts, not just in terms of more complex strategies, but also in terms of different controls and using more obscure commands? Regards, Reneko.
I don't have a personal example of this, but I wanted to just mention that it's been fascinating to see people evolve this style for heat signature, because Reneko and or Terran, I think, were among the first to sort of discover this weird way of playing heat signature where you can we have this function where you can pathfind somewhere. Like if the ship's empty and you just want to get back to your ship, we just let you click on the ship, middle click on the ship, and you'll path there and whatever. But if you're using a slipstream that makes time go slower and you go faster and you path, even when it runs out, you continue at that speed, which sounds like a huge exploit, and we would fix it if it was game breaking. But the thing is, because time isn't slow anymore, it's just insanely fast. Like trying to like shoot anyone at that speed is an insane skill challenge. And so when they discovered it, I asked them like, do you want us to fix this or is it kind of fun? And they said, it's fun. Leave it in. So we just left it in. And so there's this weird way of playing heat signature where you can like path and then unslipstream, and then it requires incredible skill to make any good use of it, but it's technically better than the other way.
That's really cool. I think there is a distinction between, like, I thought there was always a distinction between how you approach a game competitively and how you don't. But I think these sorts of control scheme things, you might inherit the right way to play, quote unquote, from a guide. But I think setting this up for yourself is the moment where you know that your attitude to the game has changed. And I think that's quite a satisfying moment. It's like where you start to configure it for being good. Like I'm approaching this with Mordhau now, where I know that it'd be advantageous for me to, because you can, as well as using the mouse to bind directions to indicate the direction of the attack you want to do, you can bind particular attacks from particular directions to particular keys. And people recommend that you do, because you may want to do an overhead swing sometimes, but without having to look up a bit, or move your mouse up. So it's faster to do that. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm probably going to start binding things, especially, which is it feels like crossing a particular Rubicon into like, I'm taking this seriously.
It's where it's the point at which you're making choices over stuff rather than the game kind of telling you what you need to do and you kind of acquiescing.
It's where you go from like sort of just learning to kind of proactively kind of staking things out.
This is cool. What's important to me. This is how I want to do it. And like games are generally better, like in a very broad sense, games are better for that kind of depth, even if it's an exploit, it's better to know that it's there, unless it breaks the game in some way, for anybody playing it. Like if the out of the box way of controlling a game absolutely works, but then there's an extra step you can take, that's a good game, I think.
I remember a bizarre thing in Indiana Jones: The Fate of Atlantis, where I discovered if you held down 0 and then pressed 9 in a fight, Indy did a sucker punch that would knock anyone out in one hit and they couldn't block it and so it felt like a cheat. I thought, I discovered a cheat code for the game. But then there's one particular Nazi who won't let you do it. Like he actually has a line of dialogue about it when you use it on him. It's like, trick won't work on me, Jones. Well, what the fuck is this? Is this a cheat or is this how you play the game? Or
the trick being punching.
Yeah, it's like you can always punch, and I think maybe the number keys were involved in some ways because I discovered this by accident. But yeah, if you held down 0 and pressed 9, you would wind up a punch. I got a special animation for it, and you'd just knock them out immediately, which was crazy overpowered. You're breaking the game, but it was obviously intended in some way. It's very weird.
That's a weird one. Our next question comes from Tom, who writes a long email, so I have to summarize it. But it begins, "Hello, Crate Show and Crowbar Wielders. First time, long time. If you would, please step into my time machine. On a previous episode, there was an anecdote I related to about being called to the big scary office of doom in school because a PC gamer issue was mistaken for something racier. In my case, I had an issue seized on the schoolyard, though after some investigation, the teacher returned the material to me with something of a smirk. In hindsight, that seems wild to me, because the ads at the time in that issue alone were actually somewhat questionable. A full-page close-up of a woman's cleavage for Leisure Suit Larry, an ad for, I think, Shadow Warrior, which seemed to feature a mass of practical gore effects, and so on. As a child with a PC Gamer subscription in Canada receiving American issues, I spent most of my time growing up with a healthy stack of demo discs that came with each issue I received. But even at that young age, I remember having some sensitivity to content that was too extreme." So Tom goes on to describe the experience of encountering a variety of games, including Carmageddon, that were obviously kind of age inappropriate and kind of having to reconcile with exposure to a lot of stuff that was grisly at a young age. Goes on to write, "Nowadays we have well-developed perspectives, naturally questioning what is tasteful in the games we play. But think back to your days as intrepid kid PC gamers. Did you ever encounter something in your early days that made you feel, without consideration of the rules, this isn't for me? Or did anyone on the pod have no limits, willfully eroding their sensitivity to the fullest extent? And if so, do they seem warped to the others on the pod? Do you feel there was a turning point where Chris needs to scroll down a bit? Do you feel there's a turning point at which you became a more conscientious gamer? In addition to the above Carmageddon reaction, I think Deus Ex was a strong turning point for how I viewed my actions in games. Hope this wasn't too long. I hope none of you have trouble getting back from the 90s. Love the pod. Best wishes, Tom."
Yeah, I definitely, like, when I was younger, uncritically enjoyed violence. And actually, the Blood remake that came out recently has sort of brought this to light a bit, because that's just a game where, like, the thing I loved about it was just fucking throwing dynamite at people, and it shreds them into gibs, and it's just, everything is gloriously bloody and violent. At the time, that was 100% positive. No reservations about this at all. And, like, the cultists would, like, scream, and they really kind of sounded kind of human, and you could set them on fire. And this is all like, I'm just a amoral kid with a toy box of destruction, and loved all of it. And now, I think there's still something to be said for, like, I think one of the reasons I liked it was just I have a particular taste for, like, I want weapons to be powerful and to take fewer hits to kill things. That's just what feels satisfying to me. But the aesthetic of it and the theming of it and the way it's presented as ultra violence and gore now does not have the same appeal to me. And I also remember Hitman being a kind of turning point on this, where, like, at first it's just like, wow, this is a whole, like, sandbox of, you know, stealth where you can get the jump on anybody, and you can basically, there's, 50 guards in this level, and you can sort of methodically murder every single one of them to make the space safe for yourself. And there was a time when I just completely enjoyed that. I'm just like, oh, this is great. Creep around everyone with a claw hammer and, like, kill every single one of them. And then after a time, it became disturbing to me. And then these days it feels very weird to, like, kill anyone you don't strictly have to. It just feels off.
I have a similar experience. I think my experience of those games as a kid, like, there are two angles on this. One was the feeling of, oh, I'm getting into something that might be too scary for me. But too scary for me and too violent for me were really distinct things. Like, 'cause I loved Carmageddon when I was a kid, and I loved Doom, and I loved Quake. Like, big cartoonish, the violent games. I loved Duke Nukem. And in those games, because actually the thing that, particularly in first-person games, I used to find first-person games, like, so immersive they were frightening. Like, you could fall into them, and, almost sort of nightmare-inducing in terms of the places they suggested and the threat they suggested. So, like, firing the shotgun and seeing the Doom imp explode in a shower of giblets was comforting, because it was like, oh, I'm in control of this scary environment. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, like, I would try, like, Hexen or something off a demo disc and be scared until I calibrated my sense of how easy it was for me to kill the things that were scary in that environment. Like, I remember, there was a Amiga 1200, alien themed first person shooter, which was it Alien Brood or something like that? It was a sequel to a top-down game, I used to find that really scary because the really truncated view distance would cause the aliens to come rushing out.
Alien Brood, yeah.
I think it was Alien Brood 2. Alien Brood 1 was top down.
Yeah.
Like, Contra sort of thing. Do I mean Contra? Maybe not.
Contra does have a top down bit.
Yeah.
But it's
like
mostly
the inside bits of Contra.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then 2, I think, was a Doom clone, basically, but with a really aggressively truncated view distance. So it was basically just it was modular corridors, basically, and everything was pitch black after a certain point. And that was terrifying because the aliens would come kind of skittering out of it. Also, I've been scared of the xenomorph from Alien for basically as long as I can remember. I think I saw that film far too young. And, so that was very particularly scary. But I remember really vividly, like, as soon as you can blast it into giblets, it's like, oh, I can handle this.
I think Dead Space gets a lot of mileage out of this, where, like, that is a game about cutting things limbs off to prevent them from functioning properly. And if those creatures were not scary and not horrific and otherworldly, you'd feel pretty weird about that. But they're just horrible enough that if you can cut off their fucking thrashing, clawing, horrible thing, you're like, thank God I can.
Because I remember that when that was first being PR'd, like the line that they were using was strategic dismemberment, and we were kind of rolling. I remember rolling. It was, what has EA got up to now? We had no idea at that point that, this is a really fucking good game.
Oh, it's alright. It's really good.
But for the reason you said, like that there is a sort of it fits into the narrative and setting. And
it is one of the things I like about it
design.
actually is it's almost not about it being scary, but just like when you come out of a fight, you actually kind of feel the way the protagonist in a horror movie feels when that shot when they're flecked with blood and they come out of it and their eyes are wide,
breathing,
and they're not like happy they survived. They're not scared currently. They're just in this kind of state of like, oh my God, what did this fucking do?
I don't want to do this again.
Yeah, right. Like, I think that was for me. Like, I don't think the violence in games, the violent content was ever particularly real to me as a kid. Like, and I think I don't think it's necessarily a case of I got older and I got more mature and I learned to see things as disturbing, because I still don't think Doom is disturbing. Like, I still think it's cartoonish and silly and there's no meaningful resemblance to real violence, really. But as games got more realistic, there were things that I found more off-putting, basically. So, it became less likely that I would run around knifing civilians in GTA games the moment GTA got more realistic, both in terms of its visuals and in terms of its storytelling. Like, Vice City was just a Scarface pastiche that you were encouraged to do big, weird wheelies around. Like, there was still a lot of Carmageddon in that game. And the Carmageddon had gone by the time GTA 4 came along, and you're supposed to believe this is like an immigrant story and it's about real New York and it's, it's all of this stuff. So suddenly killing people feels really different.
Remember how in GTA 1 you got bonus points if you ran over all of the Hare Krishna people
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, GTA 1's a good example, actually, because my dad bought me that when I was, 11, I think.
Good Lord.
Yeah. And I turned out all right. Because it was cartoonish. Like, there was no way to meaningfully map it onto, I mean, maybe that's partly personal. Like, I was probably not the kind of kid that was likely to go and try and enact something I'd seen in a game, but nonetheless, it's kind of interesting to think back on but since, GTA 5, I've said many times, really put me off. Like, I really didn't enjoy it because I thought it was mean-spirited and...
Because I was 20 in 95, so
I wasn't.
I didn't, like, when Doom came, I was, like, pretty much, if it was 18, I was 93, so I was legally allowed to buy it if it was 18 at that point. So my risque games were like massively crude and, like sort of Sam Fox strip poker kind of, that was like, I would be in the category of games that the question's talking about, which is weird, like, I don't know. But I didn't even have them because games were massively expensive and I didn't, So, yeah. It's funny that, isn't it? Games.
Time and games.
Time, games. Nouns.
Finish up with a question from Zoe, who writes, Dear pod friends, when I played Skyrim for the first time, I needed a strong imperial name for my noble steed, so I chose Brutus. I loved that horse so much that every single game horse I've owned since has been named Brutus, in his honor. Do you have any naming conventions for your horses? Or pets or children? Thanks for podding, everybody. Zoe.
I think it's an important question. Very good to leave it to last.
Yeah. What you call your horse, Tom?
I go by their appearance. And so my horse in Zelda Breath of the Wild was like blotched pink and yellow. I was really like, what the hell does this remind me of? And the best thing I could think of was like a certain kind of flavored fudge. So that horse is called Fudge.
Oh, that's quite sweet.
And I have another horse-related story that's not about their names that I'll get back to.
Alex?
At the moment, they're all being... Oh, God. This is the sort of thing that was never meant to be said aloud or kind of like, but all made public. Barchibald.
That's great.
And that's simply because we have a house rabbit called Archie. And for some reason, as a family, we all call him Barchie. I don't know why. And then, obviously, therefore, I call my horses Barchibald. And all other pets.
I find, I don't know why I find this funny. I find pets, with, sort of completely sensible human names very funny.
Yeah. Malcolm.
Yeah.
Roger.
I have called like a lot of horses Margaret.
Margaret Hodges. Hodge.
Oh, that's good because there's a Camera Obscura song called Come Back Margaret. And losing your horse is quite common.
Yeah.
Come back Margaret.
And I had several horses in Breath of the Wild before I found the one that really felt like the true Margaret. And then I managed to tame the mega horse. Have you found the mega horse in Breath of the Wild?
No,
there's one just no, it's just one huge fucking horse. There's one horse in that game that is like twice the size of every other horse. And it's really hard to tame. You need like quite a big stamina bar so you can stay on top of it for long enough to tame it. It's alone in a valley surrounded by normal sized horses. And there's no huge advantage to having a huge horse, except you can spend the rest of the game with just a horse that's by volume maybe 8 times bigger than a normal horse. And so finally that was the true Margaret.
One true Margaret. Yeah. Do you know if you could ever rename your horses in like, can you do it in Skyrim? I feel like you
Probably.
can't in Oblivion because, so this is a culture story I covered for PC Gamer. I learned that Shadowmere, which is the horse you get as part of the Dark Brotherhood quest line, I think, is, super fast black horse with red eyes, cool for your edgelords. And because it's kind of important and named, it's also marked as a quest character, which means it cannot die, which means, it can be like if it takes enough damage, which is 0 health, it gets knocked out and then eventually it gets back up. But there's a property of anything that's unconscious or dead in Skyrim that it's treated as a dead body. And so it's also an inventory container. And so people were using Shadowmere as storage by beating it to death or beating it to unconsciousness until it passed out, became a corpse. Then they'd offload all their items into its body. Like it doesn't have saddlebags or anything. They're literally putting it inside the body. And then it would wake up again because it's a plot character. And then they'd ride it to where they want to go to. And then if they wanted to retrieve an item, they had to beat it to death again and then pull their items out of its body.
Those games are good, aren't they? When are they doing another one of them? When are they doing another one of Todd Howard's Big Fucked Adventures? You said another horse story you wanted to tell us. That was
that was my horse story.
Non-name related.
Yeah, I think we've got a decent spread of horse naming conventions. It's obviously, this is a good question.
Maybe, yeah.
Touches on something we'll deal with. Yeah, I think my Dragon Age dog was called, what did I call him? I think it was Ian. It makes me laugh. I don't know why. That makes me laugh so much.
Yeah.
You ever consider them giving like full names?
Yeah, I think it has to be a completely
Ian
ordinary name.
Hammersmith.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Ian Hammersmith is too close to a video game name.
Yeah.
There's just something about like, I don't know why it's funny. I think if I ever have a dog, they will have a completely ordinary human name.
It's, I would.
Mark! I think it's because of the moment when you have a friend around who has the same name as your pet. It's such a long game power play. Like you can't have planned it. Imagine how you would feel if I got a dog and called it Tom.
Because you've got multiple Toms.
Yeah, I know. But imagine what a power play that would be given my life.
But does mean that you have to go to a park and you will have to shout Tom.
No, that's what's so great about it.
Not every time you go, I just want to call my dog back without people
Tom.
going, what? Just want my dog back.
I know. I have all
my friends are here now, but I still don't have my dog.
The dog's gone. Tom Senior wasn't following me.
There was a time on PC Gamer where if you yelled Tom and Mark, you would get 80% of the team.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. To be fair, you get 80% of that floor. Good. That is all of the questions we've got time for. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode of the podcast, you can do so by emailing us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can tweet us at crateandcrowbar. And you can also follow us on Twitter via that very same handle. That makes sense because it's the same thing. Didn't really have to point it out separately, but this outro has never been easy. You do it. There's YouTube, isn't it?
There is.
That's youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. As ever, thank you to our Patreon supporters. You can find out more about supporting the podcast and its spin-offs at patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. And who could forget Discord? I almost did. That's where our community hangs out. You find a link to that on our show notes on the website, crateandcrowbar.com, or in the main menu navigation of that same website.
Nice.
Yeah. If you would like to follow us as individuals on Twitter, that's a possibility. I'm at C Thurston. That's CTHURSTEN. Tom?
I'm at Pentadact, PENTADACT.
Lovely. And now, Alex, would you like to attempt to spell your Twitter handle first time?
And here we go.
Yeah.
Rotational. ROTATIONAL.
Yay!
Damn. He's
that's
only gone and
smooth.
nailed it.
Now you can call your horse that.
Oh, no. No. Archibald.
Archibald.
Come hither.
Maybe your Twitter name should be Archibald. That's the way.
Can't change it.
How do you spell Archibald?
It's Archibald with a B on.
That's fine. Thanks for listening, everybody.